Welcome into another episode of Betting the Pitch with your host, the real underscore G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you can find me, especially Patreon. I am going to go through the Monday Major League Baseball card, do late night with the real underscore G Warner as we did for a lot of the soccer season last year. It's really hard at this point in mid to late August to get a reasonable idea of who's starting in these baseball games, which does significantly impact the numbers. It reminds me of the COVID times when they just had every game be an action type of play, which is ridiculous because unfortunately huge prices change. And when you make action bets in baseball, it really leaves you holding the bag for whatever happens with starting pitchers. So as I think most of you who follow me know, I put a lot of my plays in right before first pitch or kickoff or whatever sport, because unfortunately a lot of things change. But going to do my best. I've projected some of these lines and also the starting pitchers, but we'll get into it, come out with an ultimate best bet for the end of the show. And as always, if you're on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. It means a lot for the search rankings or something of that nature. If you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe. And if you're not yet a Patreon subscriber, go check it out. Highly recommend it. Patreon.com/real_G Warner. You can get direct access to me, my leans across all my sports, including the 6 straight baseball wins I put out there, which all my subscribers and patrons on patreon.com had a lot of access to well beforehand. You can also interact with me throughout the day as I'm trying to get my write-ups done, posted. I go there first and then eventually get them onto Twitter before or right as the game starts, really. And also give some ideas in terms of price ranges. That's been important, and a lot of the patrons have asked for that lately. So it's a fluid learning how to do it type of process. But if you turn on the notifications after you download the app, you'll get up to second updates. And I think if you subscribe to me on any platform, you'd see the price to be very reasonable. And let's keep all the winners flowing, because it's been a really good couple months, and we're going to try to keep that momentum going. So like I said, baseball podcast here, despite it being a soccer feed. I'm going to keep doing that until someone complains. So let me know if you have any problems. But as always, leave a review and I'll read it on the next episode. But I haven't seen anything for today's. I will check that as I'm doing this. But now let's get started. All lines quoted in this podcast are courtesy of betonline.ag. My favorite place to get my bets down early. Reduced juice is offered on almost every game you want to bet right up until game time. Please follow the link found in the podcast description to fund your account and use the promo code GW50 for a 50% match bonus up to $1,000. So now that we've got some extra money in our accounts, let's go make some more. Risk a little bit to make a little more. Baseball's basically the options of the betting markets, I feel like. So if you're into trading, as I used to trade, I guess still doing my personal accounts, come on in, come along for the ride, and let's make some other money that you get paid right away rather than having to wait for contracts to expire and things of that nature. So we are now using, I guess, rotation order. I'll start with the National League game starting at 5:40 Eastern time on Monday, the 21st of August, and that is San Francisco Giants visiting Philadelphia. Scott Alexander, former Dodgers bullpen arm, who's now a opener, with maybe Alex Wood coming behind him. I'm not sure exactly who that will be. It does probably play a little bit into the line, but Philadelphia is starting a normal starting pitcher that we've been traditionally seeing for 150 years or however long this game's going, and that's Aaron Nola, who's had a pretty disappointing year so far. Always a good strikeout guy. Those have kind of been up and down this season from what I've been paying attention to. I don't have any exposure to him in fantasy, so I haven't really paid that close of attention, but I know a lot of people seemingly, I mean, Philly fans, who knows, hard to handicap them, but they're generally pretty upset in general. And I feel like they're big lovers when their players are good. And I don't know that I've seen a ton of love for Aaron Nola so far this year, but ultimately in the year of our Lord 2023, as I smack my microphone off the desk almost, he can strike people out, and that's important. The San Francisco Giants are known for their platooning, basically adding a bunch of left-handers to face a right-handed pitcher like Nola. So we should see plenty of that, which might mean J.D. Davis and Wilmer Flores are potentially not in that lineup, which does severely impact the power that San Francisco can use, especially in a small ballpark like in Philadelphia. Scott Alexander was really bad in a opener type of start a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week. Times running together in Anaheim. It's a much more difficult place to pitch here in Philadelphia. San Francisco coming off a pretty grueling series at Atlanta based on weather and things of that nature and losing a lot. But I think they did get a win today. Camilo Duvall, I think, came in and pitched a lot, which does also make me wonder if he's available for this next matchup. I feel like based on how San Francisco played in that series, he's probably going to be available, as I say, every P word possible. Current number we got are opened at NOLA minus 165 over under 8.5. It's really not changed much in the total. A little money has come into San Francisco, or this line has just kind of I guess become a little bit more normal at BetOnline. We have a 13-cent juice here as compared to 25, that I think is usually is a bookmaker opener is usually what they quote on the site I'm using. But I don't know that I'm not sure San Francisco gives me enough interest to really want to investigate just how poor Aaron Nola has been this year. He's certainly someone I'm looking to be against as a big favorite. But I think it also speaks to Philadelphia coming off the weird Little League World Series game. My former baseball co-host Scott Seinberg had a thing he was following a lot with the Sunday night fade, teams that had to travel off Sunday night baseball. That was pretty tough. Probably not a big travel issue here for Philadelphia, considering they came from Pennsylvania and Williamsport, I believe. So maybe not as big of an issue here, especially with San Francisco having to travel up from Atlanta. But I think the idea is that the game ends pretty late, and that will affect body clocks and things of that nature. But it is a night-ish game, so I don't know there's enough there for San Francisco or for an interest in San Francisco. Probably lean over, if anything, over 8.5. Next, I'll move to St. Louis visiting Pittsburgh. I'm projecting the starter for Pittsburgh here, which I think is going to be Bailey Falter, a former Philadelphia Phillies pitcher who's somehow made his way to Pittsburgh. St. Louis is starting a call-up, and his name is Rom, R-O-M, last name, and had really good strikeout numbers in AAA ever since being acquired from Baltimore in the Jack Flaherty deal. I love guys that strike people out. That's the most important thing in this game. He's a lefty, which I feel like doesn't really line very well because Pittsburgh seems to be a very right-handed heavy lineup, but no number right now. I'm projecting mine, which is making St. Louis a road favorite, which is a little bit risky considering how bad they've been this year, especially against expectations. But I like guys that go strike people out, haven't been seen before, which is a big, it's kind of like a catch-22. Do you trust the guy because he hasn't been seen before, or is he making like one of his first starts in his major league career? And does that mean the debut or something close to a debut is going to really throw him off, and we really don't know what we're going to see? That's the dilemma here, I think, and that's why I'm making St. Louis a relatively small favorite on the road. I got St. Louis at minus 121 and change on the road right now. Over under, I made 9, which feels a little bit high for Pittsburgh, but with 2 unknown pitchers, especially with one we don't even know for sure yet. Hard for me to project too much on that one, but I guess I'd like the home dog, as that's my favorite thing in this world, really, when it comes to gambling. But I am interested in fantasies like aspects. If Rom can come in, get a bunch of strikeouts, what should be a pretty easy matchup, a pretty soft landing spot for someone new to his major league career. Next, we'll move to the Mets, and they're visiting Atlanta. David Peterson at Austin, I think. Winans came up very recently and had a really good start, but he also pitches for the best team in the league, and that certainly helps. David Peterson's got really good swing and miss stuff. He just unfortunately has had a lot of trouble controlling his strikeout to walk ratios really this year. He found the slider, I think, last season, and it's been so good with it, but it seems like it's so nasty that it's really hard for him to throw strikes with. That's a concern. I am projecting a number here as well because I don't have anything that's too trustworthy. I made Peterson a 186 underdog on the road, over under somewhere. I made the over under too low. I have it somewhere around 9. It looks like it might be 10. I'm not sure if the circuit number I'm looking at is realistic, but as 188 as the money line, which is very close to my number, so maybe it's right. And now that I look at this, I guess I'm giving Winans a lot of respect, but I guess maybe I'm not, based on the money line being somewhat similar. But anyway, don't expect that the Mets are going to be close to on the card for me. I was actually just looking before I started coming on here that I was like, man, Adam Ottavino, a great fantasy closer pickup, who's been a great reliever for a lot of his career. I just wonder how many opportunities he's going to get in Atlanta. And if you're worried about having a closer who seemed to have taken the job, if you're worried about starting him or thinking about looking elsewhere, then it's probably going to be a pretty lopsided series. And Atlanta's been dealing with some injuries. Ozzie Albies on the injured list, which has been problematic. Michael Harris missed Sunday's game due to injury, I think, as well. They're playing so well. I would expect them to start resting people, but it's like an organizational thing that the Braves players just go every day. I don't think the Mets are a team that have sold so many pieces and really bought prospects for the future. I think they've given up on the season, so they're not really a team I want to back. They're ultimately a team I want to fade if I have the opportunity. Next, I'll move to Miami, visiting San Diego, and considering the hurricane and the weather that's hitting the Southwest, or excuse me, I guess Southern California is the best way to say it. I'm not really sure what's going to happen there and if this game will be played. I saw some retweeted an image of Dodgers Stadium, which didn't have the tarp on the field, which is interesting, but did have a ton of water in the parking lot. So who knows what's going on there. But similar in San Diego, especially closer to the coast. Beautiful spot, by the way, but I'm sure they don't handle rain very well because they don't get a lot of it. But I looked at the weather. It looked pretty clear for tomorrow. So maybe this game happens. Projected in Miami starting pitcher here. It looks like Johnny Cueto, though. He's been hanging on by a thread in the major leagues, essentially. And looks like Michael Wacha started for San Diego. San Diego's been a pretty big favorite for about a week. Bet against them every game of the Baltimore series. That did not go great, but did make a fair amount of money back on Arizona. I guess 1-2 with all underdogs on the road. It's not so bad to lose a series, but it definitely is not profitable. But then the Diamondbacks just crushed them this whole series. One on Thursday on them, and I think one on Saturday on them. So that was really nice. It's been a good week. San Diego still seems really overvalued based on the names in their roster, and they just haven't played well enough. They still have a lot of talent, and they should be better than they are, but they're not. I'm making Johnny Cueto like a 170 underdog on the road, over under. I'm having in the 9 region, 8.5 to 9, something in that spot, which is a pretty standard total. I think across Major League Baseball. That's actually probably a little low, but take into consideration San Diego and the ballpark factors, the marine layer out in the West Coast. But Johnny Cueto is not a guy I want to back, but certainly looking to back Miami potentially in this series, maybe later down the line. Moving to the American League, Luis Castillo and the Seattle Mariners, the hottest team in baseball, probably. They visit the Chicago White Sox, and team that literally the Colorado Rockies broadcast was saying how when they took a lead earlier today, how Chicago White Sox have nothing to play for. They don't care. They seem really angry and disinterested, and they came back and scored 7 runs in like the 7th inning to win a game. So I'm not sure what that means, but ultimately Touki Toussaint, who's been in the Cleveland organization and then originally I think with Atlanta and is moving all around, is making spot starts, or I guess as part of the Chicago White Sox rotation because they traded so many arms away. I'm not expecting that he will be able to change the fortunes of Chicago, and Seattle looks great. Luis Castillo has been a little more inconsistent than I would hope. But currently he's a big favorite. So I got current bet online number is Toussaint, a 167 underdog at home, over under is 9, just slightly to the under. I think that's based on Seattle and Luis Castillo's pitching, but I think I'd lean over. If anything, the lineup has been great. Seattle seemed to do this last year where they're really slow to start in the year, but it get really hot towards the end of the season. Feels a little bit early, but they went on this sick run in the playoffs as well, including, I think, coming back from like a 9-0 deficit to eliminate the Blue Jays. But this is a spot where I'm continuing to try to back Seattle as an underdog, though. They're a really gigantic favorite, and probably is one of those, it's like that time of the year, dog days of summer, where the Chicago White Sox broadcasters are saying for fans is to like avoid the upper tiers and just come sit in the empty seats in the lower bowl, which I thought was hilarious. But I think it speaks to how much some of these players care as well, because ultimately you want your stats to be good, but I think people are playing for home runs rather than moving runners and doing all those other things that winning teams do. Next, I'll move to Boston, visiting Houston, coming off a road sweep in the Bronx, which is hilarious. And being a Red Sox fan growing up, that was very, very interesting. I still don't like the Yankees. I'm not sure that I care about the Red Sox too much, but Boston now goes to Houston, and they're still trying to fight their way into the wild card to make the playoffs. And really, once you get in there, you never know what could happen. Houston on the other side had a really bad weekend. Missed Kyle Tucker for a lot of the games, did pinch hit today, so I expect he'll play, though he's a lefty, potentially going against James Paxton, the big maple, big lefty as well for Boston. So we'll see what that ends up looking like. But Christian Javier on the other side for Houston has been really, really poor this year. He's got incredible stuff, but it's only a fastball and a slider. So if they're not both working, then he can be really, really, he can get hit really hard. Current number is Paxton a slight underdog on the road, plus 115. Over under is 9, about even juice on both sides, a little bit more to the over from what I'm seeing at Bet Online. I am very interested in the Red Sox here. I think their bullpen is solid. I don't know that I like it Houston's, I think, has been the best in baseball. I saw a stat today. So that's tough to go against, especially on the road. But Christian Javier is a guy that I think can get hit pretty hard. James Paxton has been a little bit inconsistent, but has stayed remarkably healthy since returning or getting a late start to the year, coming off the IL, I think a couple months in. But if he's right, he's got the best stuff of almost anyone out there. And I think Houston, they got a lot of righties, so that's going to be a tough matchup for a left-handed pitcher to go, especially on the road with those Crawford boxes so close. But just based on the way these pitchers have been going, I think Boston is playing a ton better, clearly, because they just swept the Yankees on the road while Houston got swept at home. Travel certainly benefits the Astros, but I like the Red Sox here. Next, I'll go to Kansas City visiting Oakland, the series no one's going to cancel their dates for, that's for sure. Tucker Davidson, former Atlanta Braves starting pitchers, a lefty on the mound for Kansas City, visiting Paul Blackburn and the Oakland Athletics. Currently, Oakland is a minus 130 favorite at home. Over under is 8.5, juiced all the way to the under. And that's a really, really expensive price for Oakland, though I feel like they've been playing better of late. Had a tough series with Baltimore, but that's one of the best teams in baseball at home. I don't know if they got swept, but it wasn't good. I think they did. I think they got swept. I'm not sure. It's kind of crazy to see Oakland this big of a favorite. Kansas City's been a little bit more, I think they've been better. They've been frisky. I think they've been really struggling in their bullpen, whereas Oakland's not really invested in theirs, but I guess at home, and it's probably better than Kansas City's because Kansas City's been one of the worst. Problem is, if you get a good start from Tucker Davidson, how do you keep the lead and hold on to it? And especially if you go to extra innings, you're pretty much a dead duck with a road team unless they take a pretty big lead in that top half of the 10th. I don't think Tucker Davidson is good enough, but I also feel like, or for me to want to back Kansas City, but I think Oakland is giving way too much, and I really don't blame anyone for taking the odds against it and maybe even just rolling it over, and eventually you'll come out ahead in this series. Moving now to interleague play, we have Chicago Cubs and Javier Assad on the road at Detroit and Alex Faedo. Assad currently a minus 129 road favorite. Over under is 9, a little bit juice to the under. Looks like there's been some money on the over since the open. I think that makes sense based on Faedo's track record. He's pretty good a couple seasons ago, was injured this year, had a fingernail, or I think middle fingernail removed, and then came off the IL and pitched and got hit pretty hard by the Blue Jays in the start against Alek Manoah way back when. He's been pretty solid since then, and Assad has been awesome. He was kind of a high leverage reliever early in the season and definitely lost a game for me against the Brewers, but in recent starts has been really hot. He gets a kind of sneaky under the radar Detroit Tigers team that's hitting the ball really well. But he's been on a roll. So have the Tigers. One of them will continue to be on a roll most likely. Or I guess maybe an average type of outing could be expected from Assad. But the Cubs have been playing really well. As of the Tigers, I'm pretty interested in kind of where this could go. I felt Detroit were so much better than Cleveland. Probably should have swept the Guardians in Cleveland this weekend. Cubs, they got to play the Royals. That always helps, but it didn't seem to be as easy. Like I said, that the Royals have been pretty frisky. I'm not interested in laying any sort of number on with a road favorite, I got to say. So it's Detroit or nothing for me. I think I'm going to look a lot more closely at this one and see if I believe in Assad, because I think there's a lot of questions about whether he can strike out enough batters, and pitching to contact against the Detroit lineup. It looks really scary at the moment. Cincinnati then hosts the Angels. Got Graham Ashcraft visiting Lucas Giolito. And current number is Giolito minus 118 favorite at home. Over under is 9, a little bit juice to the over. Over's taking a little bit of money since the open, which doesn't really make a ton of sense to me because Cincinnati's not been hitting anywhere near the way they were hitting, because that's impossible. But the lineup has really dried out. Elly De La Cruz is swinging at every slider that's in the dirt, it seems. And I don't know necessarily if the weather's going to affect this one as well, similar to the story in San Diego, but seemed like the weather's going to be clear, and we'll see what ends up happening. But Ashcraft has been really good. I'm not sure that it's really buyable, because Graham Ashcraft throws a 98-mile sinker and basically tries to get you to smack the ball onto the ground and turn as many of those outs into ground ball outs as possible. It works really well in Cincinnati because you can't give up fly balls in that ballpark. Similar sort of story in the Angels ballpark, as they've been moving in the fences as much as they can every season, but still a much better pitcher's park than Cincinnati. I think Giolito is a guy I just never really want to back. I really like going against him because I don't think his changeup's that good, even though it's just like premier pitch. He likes to throw it against righties, which is really dangerous because it's back up right into a barrel. Problem is, if you're back in Cincinnati here, you're going to have to back a team that's been really, really struggling. When I look at bullpen, Cincinnati's I think is better at the end at closer because Alexis Diaz is great, but getting to him has been problematic. That kind of speaks to why the Reds have been kind of cooling off lately, besides their bats not hitting. But the Angels on the other side, I don't think Trout will be back for this one. We'll see about, I mean, we got to assume Ohtani's in the lineup every day, but if he misses, then that would probably swing this line to Cincinnati being a favorite, which says something to me. I'm not calling for that. I expect him to play, especially after the day off Sunday, but you never know. And I think Cincinnati is probably they're definitely a side I lean to at this point. I think that Ashcraft could go and outpitch Giolito, or at least hang around. Then you got odds that you could potentially win a bullpen race late. And maybe that will come up as one of the possibilities for my best bets later in the show. So stick around. Last but not least, we'll go to, I guess before we get to the best bet, is to give Texas and Jordan Montgomery on the road at Arizona. And Ciccone, I believe, is starting for Arizona. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And also on my pronunciation, looks like Montgomery's a minus 151 favorite on the road, which is gigantic considering how poorly Texas has been hitting lately. Best lineup in baseball for 4 months or so is now really struggling to do anything. Getting swept at home by the Brewers is really dangerous, especially as an underdog. The Brewers were every game of the series, including a really big one on Sunday, and really didn't have much problem getting to Max Scherzer and getting a pretty poor pitcher through, I think, 5 or 6 innings, who I'm forgetting his name is off the top of my head. Adrian Hauser, that's who it was. But Arizona, on the other side, they played really well in San Diego, got the day off, really could have swept that series, got the day off because of the weather, I think, today. So got back to Arizona and got to rest today while Texas is kind of going the wrong direction. With that being said, and because Texas is a gigantic road favorite, I don't really love fading Jordan Montgomery, though. I feel like his ground ball tendencies and just big 12-6 curveball is really not enough to scare me away. I'm not sure I trust Ciccone enough. Clearly, I don't even know how to pronounce his name potentially, but that plus 139 looks very good to me. And I feel like there's probably some runs in Arizona as well. Pitchers that don't go there frequently. Montgomery, formerly of the Yankees, and I guess he was in St. Louis. So you might have pitched in Arizona before a couple times, but it's never the easiest place to go. It's always an adjustment. And Arizona, I think, is in a better position. Paul Sewell at the end of their bullpen is a disaster, whereas Texas does have Will Smith, who's not great, but Aroldis Chapman's been really good. And that bullpen seemingly has been a little bit better than Arizona's because Arizona's been so poor. This feels like a pretty big toss-up, though. I feel like it's not correlated to want to back a home underdog and also the over, but I think you could see some runs in this one. And I'm really not that afraid of Texas at this point. I feel like value players, certainly if you want to bet streaks, I mean, Arizona's been playing well, Texas is not, and they're a plus 139 underdog at Bet Online. So that's interesting to me, of course. And I guess it's probably time to get into the best bet portion of the show. So while you're all here, I guess some ideas about what's going to come this week. I'm going to dive pretty deep into the Champions League, Europa Conference League qualifying, as I think there's going to be some decent opportunities for some midweek bets Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Of course, baseball stuff coming out each night. Pregame stuff comes out each night before I go to sleep is kind of what my rule is to myself, to try to get out there then. But then at the same sort of story, I guess, with Patreon as well. All my stuff comes out overnight, leans across all the sports that I'm handicapping at each time. And you can also see the bets I put in for college football and the NFL that are already on that Patreon site, patreon.com/real_G Warner. Check it out. I promise you, if you are interested, it will be worth your while. So check it out, patreon.com/real_G Warner. So I guess it's time for my ultimate best bet, or I guess the best bet of this show. A little bit different because ultimate best bet is the soccer thing I do, and I'm picking from the best bets across the top 5 European soccer leagues. So I think I'm tempted. Let's go. I got to hit record. Hey, it's real_G Warner. This is Betting the Pitch, Major League Baseball edition for Monday, August 21st. For my best bet on this episode, I'm going to go with the Boston Red Sox. James Paxton getting plus 120 right now at Bet Online in Houston at the Houston Astros. Boston's been playing really well, just swept the Yankees on the road. Houston got swept at home by the Seattle Mariners, who are definitely a bogey team for them. But still, Christian Javier's two-pitch pitcher. They've both not been working. And if you don't have two pitchers, or if you don't have two pitches, you can't really fool major league lineups. So James Paxton, big lefty, has had a lot of great success over his career. Red Sox playing really well. And I think the bullpen can hold a lead if James Paxton can deliver one to them. So take the Boston Red Sox plus 120 and laugh all the way to the bank. And that'll do it for this episode of Betting the Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. I think this was brief, but hopefully that's what everybody wants. If you're on YouTube, hit subscribe for an Apple Podcast or Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. I'll read whatever comments come out of that on when I see them. And I'll talk to you all this week.